So this finishes your DNA viruses. Myxoviruses divided into orthomyxovirus and paramyxovirus. Influenza. Paramyxovirus has parainfluenza, mumps, measles, and respiratory syncytial virus. So these are the major viruses under each family. Can you tell me which is the most important difference between orthomyxo and paramyxo? Orthomyxo replicate in nucleus, whereas paramyxovirus they replicate in cytoplasm. Orthomyxovirus influenza has a segmented RNA. How many segment? 8 segment. Paramyxoviruses they have a unsegmented linear RNA. They also vary from each other by the property of expressing heme agglutinin and neuraminidase antigen. Myxoviruses they have heme agglutinin and neuraminidase antigen. This heme agglutinin antigen is responsible for, they say that on the surface of influenza virus there is an antigen called as heme agglutinin antigen. This antigen is responsible for binding to the receptors of RBC. So this is responsible for a reaction called as heme agglutination reaction. When you add influenza virus to a drop of RBC, the influenza virus will be clumped on the surface of RBC, which is called as heme agglutination reaction. Influenza virus has got one more antigen, mushroom shaped antigen called as neuraminidase antigen. This neuraminidase antigen has a property of replacing heme agglutinin antigen and self binding to the same receptor. That results in reversal of heme agglutination. The reversal of heme agglutination reaction is called as elution, described as elution. So various myxoviruses they vary from each other in their expression of HA and NA antigen. Like for example, influenza, parainfluenza and mumps, they express both HA and both are. Measles expresses only HA antigen, no neuraminidase antigen, whereas respiratory syncytial virus both NA and HA both are absent. So that is how their expression of HA and NA antigen. So coming to the coming to the orthomyxovirus, that is influenza. Influenza virus, they say that the HA antigen of influenza virus undergo antigenic variation. The antigenic variation is of two types. What are the two types of antigenic variation? Antigenic shift and antigenic drift. Which is a major change, shift or drift. Shift is shifting from one place to other place, major change. Drift means dragging, just you drag the thing from a place to the other place. So shift is always a major change, and because it is major change, it results in pandemics and periodic epidemic. Not periodic epidemic, explosive epidemic. It results in pandemics and major explosive epidemic, whereas drift results in outbreaks and small periodic epidemics. Okay. Antigenic shift is due to, you know that influenza has got 3 subtype, serotype A, B and C. Antigenic shift is due to only due to type A, whereas drift can be due to type A and B, both can cause antigenic drift. Antigenic shift is due to genetic reassortment or recombination. You know that influenza has got how many segment? 8 segment. Between the 8 segment you will have genetic reassortment, and different influenza viruses, if they infect the same cell, then between the genetic segments of different influenza, avian influenza, swine influenza, they can have a genetic reassortment. So this results in antigenic shift, whereas antigenic drift is just due to a point mutation. Shift occurs rarely. They say that antigenic shift occurs every 20 to 30 years, whereas drift occurs every 2 to 3 years. So drift occurs very frequently than antigenic shift. Okay. Coming to the clinical manifestation, influenza can produce upper respiratory tract infection, flu-like manifestation. Complications, they say that secondary bacterial pneumonia is more common than influenza-induced pneumonia. Okay. In secondary bacterial pneumonia, the various agents like Staph aureus, okay, pneumococcus, all this H influenza, all this can cause secondary bacterial pneumonia than influenza induced pneumonia. One more complication is Ray's syndrome following aspirin intake. This is common in influenza B. Influenza B can produce Ray's syndrome following aspirin intake. Fine. So these are the common clinical feature of influenza. Now what I will tell you is specific clinical features, like in case of avian flu and H1N1 flu. Avian flu is, which is the most common strain of avian flu? H5N1 is the most common strain of avian flu. It was started from 1997 from Hong Kong. In India it is seen in 2003 onwards, and they say that the transmission is only from bird to man. There is no man to man transmission. However, this particular avian flu is highly virulent, as it has PB1F2 gene, which is a virulent gene which is expressed by avian flu strains. In spite of its high virulence, there is no man to man transmission, hence it has produced more mortality. However, the morbidity is less. Very few cases only have been reported, because there is no man to man transmission. The drug of choice is again oseltamivir. Oseltamivir is the drug of choice. Apart from H5N1, the other avian flu strain, the other avian flu strains are, you can remember, as 77, 79 and 92, that is H7N7, H7N9 and H9N2. These are the other avian flu strains. Among these, H7N9 had caused an outbreak in China in 2013. Okay, so this is about avian flu. Now we will discuss about H1N1 flu. Is it a swine flu? Very common language, it is called as swine flu. Is it the correct word or not? H1N1 flu is a combination of genetic recombination of 4 strains, 1 avian strain, 2 swine strain and 1 human strain. And this combination, the genetic recombination has taken place inside pig. Pigs are the mixing vessel. Inside the pig, the genetic recombination has taken place. Hence, they say the WHO strictly told that do not use the swine flu word, it is not the correct word. And it was started in 2009 April in California, and by 2 to 3 months it has spread to the whole world. The WHO has declared it as a pandemic in June 11, 2009. So, in 2 to 3 months it has spread the whole world. The migration was so fast that it has affected the entire world. How it is possible? The reason is there is well documented man to man transmission. As man to man transmission is well documented, hence the transmission was faster. And we all were lucky in 2009 because the virus was less virulent. Though it has caused more number of morbidity, but as the PB1F2 gene was lacking, the H1N1 of 2009 was less virulent. So, morbidity was more, however, mortality was less. Whatever mortality was reported, they were telling that it was due to the secondary bacterial infection, underlying disorders, underlying health related diseases, immunocompromise, old age, all that, because of that the mortality was more, otherwise the virus was less virulent. So, from 2009 to 2014 we were in a post pandemic period. The entire world was in a post period except India and New Zealand, where the local intense transmission was ongoing. Local intense transmission was ongoing, but it was to a lesser extent. But in 2015, January to April, this was the time when again a explosive outbreak or explosive epidemic has occurred in India, where almost 34,000 cases were reported. Maximum cases were reported from Gujarat, Rajasthan. These two states were the most affected state. Among South India, of course, the Telangana was the most affected state. Okay, so this was like that, and the diagnosis of H1N1 flu, they say that you do a reverse transcriptase real time PCR. The reverse transcriptase real time PCR is done to detect the specific HA and NA genes. Treatment: the neuraminidase inhibitor like oseltamivir. Which was available as Tamiflu or Zanamivir, which is available as a inhalational form. Oseltamivir and Zanamivir available as Tamiflu tablet, whereas Zanamivir as inhalational sprays. Chemoprophylaxis also oseltamivir is given. now we have vaccine prophylaxis also. Both the live attenuated as well as the killed vaccines are available. Both form of H1N1 vaccines are available. So this is all about swine flu, and you can tell me what are the actual swine flu strain. The actual swine flu strains are 11, 12 and 32. That is H1N1 of 1918, then H1N2 and H3N2. So these were the swine flu strains which had caused the epidemics and the pandemics in the past. To be more specific, H1N1 of 1918, they say that particular swine flu strain was so virulent that it has wiped out 1/6 of the world population. The number of deaths were at that time 1/6 of the world population, which was more than the number of deaths during the First World War. During 1918, the First World War was going on, and the report says that the number of deaths were more in this pandemic than the First World War deaths. In contrast, the H1N1 of current days, 2009 H1N1 is less virulent. So now I will tell you the sialic acid receptors. Sialic acid receptors and how they are important for influenza pathogenicity. Sialic acid are the host cell receptors. They are the host cell receptors to which influenza infect. As I told you, influenza, which is the receptor? Influenza, the receptor is HA antigen. That binds to sialic acid receptor of mammalian cell. Okay, there are two types of sialic acid receptor. Alpha 2,6 receptors, they are present in upper respiratory tract of human being. Alpha 2,3 receptors, they are the avian. So alpha 2,6 receptors are the human receptors. They are present on the human upper respiratory tract, whereas alpha 2,3 receptors, they are the avian receptors. They are usually present in the intestinal epithelial cells of avian flu. In human, they are present in lower respiratory tract, but very few number, whereas alpha 2,6 receptors are present abundant in the upper respiratory tract. So that tells you how the, so what is the receptor for the human strain? For the human strain of influenza virus, the receptor is alpha 2,6, which is present in upper respiratory tract. That is why most of the influenza, the manifestation is URTI. But the avian flu strains, they infect alpha 2,3 receptors of intestinal epithelium. So in the birds, the avian flu strains in the bird will produce a intestinal manifestation, not respiratory manifestation. But in same strain, if they infect human, in human the upper respiratory tract, they don't have alpha 2,3 receptor. Alpha 2,3 receptors are extremely scanty in upper respiratory tract. That is why they do not infect humans. By chance, whichever few alpha 2,3 receptors are there in upper respiratory tract, if by chance if they infect that, then through that they will come to lower respiratory tract, and lower respiratory tract, of course, they will have alpha 2,3 receptors, so they can cause lower respiratory tract infection in human. So that is how they say that the avian flu strains, they usually do not infect human, because humans in the upper respiratory tract alpha 2,3 receptors are absent or very scanty. That is, only few individuals only will get avian flu. But once they infect human, they will go to the lower respiratory tract, and lower respiratory tract will have alpha 2,3 receptors, by which they can cause severe manifestations. But always the number of cases will be very less, because upper respiratory tract only is the site through which the virus will enter, and we don't have alpha 2,3 receptors in the upper respiratory tract. So this is the sialic acid receptor theory for influenza virus. And why pigs are a mixing vessel? They say that pigs are the most common mixing vessel of influenza virus. Why? Because pigs, the cells contain both alpha 2,3 and alpha 2,6 receptors. That is why pigs, the same cell can be infected by avian flu strain as well as can be infected by human strain. That is why inside the human, inside the pig cell, all the avian flu strains will go inside, the swine flu strains will go inside, and the recombination will take place. That is the reason why pigs are the common mixing vessel. Okay, so the sialic acid receptor theory is very important to understand the pathogenicity of influenza virus. So this finishes your orthomyxovirus. Now we will discuss paramyxovirus. Paramyxovirus, to start with mumps. Mumps virus is the most common virus to cause childhood parotitis. Is the most common cause of childhood parotitis. And please remember, parotitis is usually bilateral than unilateral, and it is usually infected in 70 to 90% of cases. And please remember, though parotid is the most common gland to be infected, but at the same time you have to remember that other salivary gland are also rarely infected. However, parotid is the most common gland to be infected. Coming to the complication, the most common complication is yes, orchitis. Orchitis is more unilateral than bilateral. Unilateral orchitis is more common than bilateral. That is the reason why infertility following mumps orchitis, common or rare? Rare. Second complication is aseptic meningitis. If they ask most common manifestation in female, answer will be aseptic meningitis. Overall it is orchitis. Then pancreatitis, euphoritis, all these are other complications. There is something called as atypical mumps. Atypical mumps means there is no parotitis at all. As I told you, parotitis will be there in 70 to 90% of cases. That means in 10% of cases there will be atypical mumps. There is no parotitis. Directly the child is presented with aseptic meningitis. This is called as atypical mumps. And please remember, following recovery, deafness is permanent, everything will be recovered, but what doesn't get recovered is the deafness. Okay. And certain other MCQs like MMR. MMR means what? Mumps, measles, rubella. Here, as far as incubation period is concerned, the Harrison derived incubation periods are mumps 19 days, measles 10 days, rubella 14 days. Well, how long the patient is infectious? The patient is infectious. In mumps, it is from -1 to +1 to 2 week of parotitis. Mumps, the patient is infectious from -1 to +1 week of parotitis, 1 to 2 weeks of parotitis. Measles, the patient is infectious from -4 to +5 days of rash. This is all, these are very important MCQs. -4 to +5 days of rash. In rubella, the patient is infectious from -1 to +1 week of rash. Okay, so this is the general principles, figures what you need to remember. Fine. Don't forget the vaccine strain in mumps is Jerry Lanston. It is given either alone or along with MMR vaccine. Okay, it is given either alone or along with MMR vaccine. Then let us discuss measles. Measles is the most common cause of childhood rash. And one more thing what I forgot to tell you is, MMR in 2 poxes, there are few things which are common, like there is no carrier. MMR in 2 poxes stands for mumps, measles, rubella. 2 pox means chicken pox, smallpox. All these 5 viruses, there is no carrier, and the only source of infection will be cases. There is no animal reservoir also, and once you are infected, you will be lifetime immunized. Though it doesn't happens always, but they say that once infected, the immunity usually lasts for lifelong. So these are the common features for all 5: mumps, measles, rubella, chicken pox and smallpox. Coming to measles, what is the incubation period of measles? I told you 10 days. So can you tell me at 10th day what you will develop? The 3 important manifestations are fever, rashes and Koplik spot. So can you tell me which appears first? Easy to remember, you would remember just alphabetically. First F, then K, then R. So 10th day fever, 12th day Koplik spot and 14th day rash. The Koplik spots, of course you know they are, what is the Koplik spot? They are the bluish white discoloration of buccal mucosa. They are pathognomic of measles. They are pathognomic of measles. Rashes, the peculiarity of measles rash is, first it will appear behind the ears. then it will spread. The rashes of the measles rash first appears behind the ears. So, this is again a peculiarity of measles rash. And one more MCQ they ask, in HIV infected individual the rashes will be absent, no rashes in HIV individual. Okay. Complications in measles, the most common complication will be secondary bacterial infection in the form of otitis media, pneumonia, etc. There could be measles induced pneumonia also. Measles pneumonia is called as giant cell pneumonia or Hesset pneumonia. CNS complication, the most dreaded complication is SSP. SSP is common or rare? This is the severe most, however at the same time it is the rarest complication. What is SSP? Subacute sclerosing panencephalitis. Subacute sclerosing panencephalitis, SSP. So, SSP, the occurrence is 1 in 3 lakh, 1 in 3 lakh cases SSP occur, and SSP has a higher mortality rate. Mortality rate is always high. The onset is, the risk is more if primary measles occurs less than 2 year age. If primary measles occur less than 2 year age, then the chance of development of SSP always higher, and SSP usually occurs 7 to 10 years after the primary measles. It occurs 7 to 10 years after the primary measles. Okay, so this is all about complications of measles. Vaccine, Edmostem Jagrepstein is a live attenuated vaccine. Usually it is given at 9 months, along with what? Which vitamin? A. If given, during outbreak, if the measles outbreak is going on, then it is given at 6 months. In such case, you have to repeat at 9 months. During outbreak, if you have to give at 6 months, in such case you have to repeat at 9 months. And toxic shock syndrome can be a complication because of contamination of vaccine vial with Staph aureus. Okay. And one more aspect is following exposure. What is the criteria following exposure? Following exposure, you can give measles immunoglobulin within 3 days of exposure. You can also give vaccine within 3 days of exposure. Either measles immunoglobulin or vaccine is given. Please remember, never both. It is only condition where combined immunization is not given. You have to maintain at least 2 to 3 week of gap. Okay, combine into 2 to 3 months of gap. Okay, so combined immunization is not given here. The only case where the combined immunization is not given. Okay, so this is all about measles. And regarding the measles elimination strategy, they say that KFC strategy stands for keep up, follow up and catch up. Catch up the unvaccinated individual, keep up the immunization program. So like that, this strategy is been followed for measles elimination: keep up, follow up and catch up. Okay, so this is all about measles. Then para-influenza virus. Para-influenza virus, only one MCQ they ask. It is agent of crop. It causes crop. Crop means the whole tract is infected. That is, it is acute laryngo tracheal bronchitis. The whole respiratory tract is affected. Crop, para-influenza virus. Then the next is respiratory syncytial virus. Respiratory syncytial virus is the most common cause of bronchitis in infant, bronchiolitis in infant. Okay, and the respiratory syncytial virus, they say that it can they say that the most common age group will be affected is 6 weeks to 6 months, and severe cough, severe dry cough will be the most common presentation. Exacerbation of asthma can take place. If respiratory syncytial virus is infected, then there can be acute exacerbation of bronchial asthma. Okay. Diagnosis, they say that multinucleated giant cells will be seen. In this context, I want to add one point. In measles, you can write down, measles also multinucleated giant cells are seen, which are called as Warthin Finkeldei Janssen. Warthin Finkeldei multinucleated giant cells. Similarly, multinucleated giant cells are also seen in respiratory syncytial virus. The drug of choice is ribavirin. Ribavirin is the drug of choice in RSV. Okay. Next is rubella. Rubella is also called as German measles. Similarly, what is the other name of measles? Measles is also called as rubeola. Rubella is also called as German measles. What is the incubation period of rubella? 19, 10 and 14 days. Okay. And as I told you, MMR and 2 poxes, the common feature is there is no carrier. Source is always a case. And the incubation period is 14 days. After 14 days, the first manifestation will be rashes, followed by lymphadenopathy, especially occipital and post auricular lymphadenopathy is common. Occipital and post auricular lymphadenopathy is common, and there is a characteristic spot seen in rubella called as Frochmere spot. Koplik spots are seen in measles, whereas Frochmere spots are seen in rubella. The Frochmere spots are nothing but they are the petechial spot. Petechial spot in soft pellet and uvula. The petechial spots in soft pellet and uvula. There is something about congenital rubella what you have to know. Congenital rubella, which is the period where maximum transmission takes place. Maximum transmission as well as the maximum severity occurs in first trimester. If somebody will ask you which is the triad of congenital rubella syndrome, the triad of congenital classical congenital rubella syndrome is nothing but eye, ear and heart. Among these three, which is the commonest? The most common congenital rubella presentation is sensory neural deafness. Sensory neural deafness is the most common presentation. Most common ocular is cataract or not? Most common ocular presentation is, they say that salt and pepper retinopathy is the most common ocular presentation, followed by the second most common ocular representation is cataract. Most common cardiac defect, most common cardiac defect is patent ductus arteriosus, followed by pulmonary artery stenosis, followed by ventricular septal defect, VSD, ventricular septal defect. Okay, so this is how you have to remember the classical congenital rubella syndrome. There is expanded rubella syndrome, expanded congenital rubella syndrome. In addition to the classical feature, there are additional features such as hepatosplenomegaly, IUGR, and a typical finding called as blueberry muffin syndrome. Blueberry muffin syndrome is characterized by, they say that you will have hepatosplenomegaly plus petechial spot, thrombocytopenia plus petechial spot, in various places, which is called as blueberry muffin syndrome. Okay, so this is about congenital rubella. Now let us discuss about the vaccine. Rubella, the vaccine is RA27/3. It is given either alone or along with MMR vaccine. It is usually given after 1 year. And please remember, if given in adult, then the pregnancy has to be avoided. Pregnancy has to be avoided for 28 days. If it is given in adult females, then the pregnancy has to be avoided at least for 28 days. The reason is it is a teratogenic virus. Okay, so this finishes your myxovirus.